I guess the March window for the U.S. is approaching quick. They've just released the kits, and now they've just released the squad for this March window where they play Belgium and Portugal. You got to give credit to the U.S. They've actually got four great friendlies lined up ahead of the World Cup. You got Belgium and Portugal this window, and then Germany and Senegal in May/early June, right before the start of the World Cup. So it is a huge, huge opportunity for the U.S. to see where they are at the final moment, get those seriously high competitive friendlies in. You're not playing, you're playing top teams in the World Cup that you expect to be making a big difference at this summer's World Cup. But kit wise, I'm a huge fan of the home, those red and white stripes, or the white with the red stripes, I should say. Really, I think the U.S. should stick with that as their main kind of general ideal. You see a lot of these countries have the same, home kit, but just slight variations. I think the U.S. should continue to do that. The away kit, that black/navy stars design, I am actually a fan of. You have one kit that's a little bit more out there, and maybe not for everyone because there's a lot going on. But then you have the away kit that the rest of the crowd can appeal to. You kind of get the both worlds of that front. So I'm actually a big fan of the kits. But when it comes to the squad, that's what I want to talk about here. Pochettino announced a 27-man squad, and the big exclusion really is Nokai Banks. I know a lot of conversations have gone on in the last week regarding Banks and this call up. I know a lot of people are slandering him, but again, he's still a teenager, he's still young, and he grew up, experiencing both cultures. So it's a huge decision. I mean, once he makes that decision, he's not going to be able to go back on it. So it's a huge, huge decision, and I understand him taking his time. Could he, start at 19 years old in the World Cup? Yeah, he can. But at the same time, he wants to make sure he makes the right decision for the rest of his career. So I don't blame him for taking his time. I don't think anyone at U.S. Soccer does as well. They're talking with him. They're trying to figure it out. But I really don't blame him for wanting to take his time. And I mean, really, are you going to put a 19-year-old who only has 2 caps or 3 caps in a World Cup starting spot? It's going to be a tough ask for someone at a center back especially. But with the 27-man squad, notable exclusions. Haji Wright, bit of a knock, so he misses out. Serginho Dest with a hamstring injury. He misses out. He's going to hopefully be back for the World Cup. It wasn't as bad as it was initially feared. That injury was picked up for a PSV match about a week ago or so. So we knew he was going to be out. And then Tyler Adams is also missing with a bit of a knock as well. So those 3 guys that you would all expect to be in the World Cup team are missing in this March window. So you expect those 3 to come back in and 3 of these guys to drop out. But when it comes to the goalkeeping situation, I believe I had on my list Schulte as one of the guys. It seems as though he's lost his spot and is out of the pecking order at this point. Chris Brady and Roman Celentano kind of occupy that spot, as well as Matt Freese and Matt Turner, 2 guys you expected to be called up and will be on the World Cup roster. In my opinion, having somebody like Celentano in there is a bit of a curious case. In my opinion, I think somebody like Fari, who is playing in the MLS this year with San Diego, is a great example of somebody you could have called up in this window. If you're going to call up 4 goalkeepers, why not call up somebody young like that, get him training and used to, being around a national team? He looks like he really could be the future goalkeeper of this national team. A lot of people are talking about the lack of quality in the goalkeeping department for the U.S. And I agree. Matt Turner's not lived up to any bit of expectations in the last couple of years. Matt Freese is not a great goalkeeper, so that's a worrying in that front. Chris Brady has not really stepped up too much for Chicago and for the U.S. And then Celentano is just not a good enough goalkeeper to carry a U.S. team. But at the same time, U.S. have a lot of good young goalkeepers that are still hopefully working their way up. So we'll see. I mean, somebody like Gaga Salina was definitely hoped to be the starting goalkeeper for this World Cup, but has really struggled to find consistent first team minutes anywhere. I think a move to Chelsea has really stalled his career. But Chris Brady being in there, I'm all right with that. He was another guy that I had on my list of goalkeepers to be in the squad. So him being in there with Freese and Turner, I'm on board with. I'm perfectly fine with. And honestly, I don't disagree with this group of goalkeepers other than Celentano. Maybe I would have had someone like Furi in there. Now, defenders, this is where the curious case comes in. You got Max Arston, which you expected with Columbus. Alex Freeman, who's come back. He's at Villarreal now. He's not really getting minutes at all. But I still think that he's a solid player for the U.S. and has done well for the U.S. So I would expect him to be in there. Mark McKenzie over at Toulouse, I think he will start in this window and probably the World Cup. Tim Ream, I think he will be a guy who will be in the conversation. I said in my video previously, talking about the U.S. potential roster, that he's a guy that's a bit of a leader. He's been there, done that. He's experienced. Help guide some of these other guys. Make sure, but we just cannot have him starting every single match. And maybe we put him in late game trying to kill a game, and he can just head balls away. I think he'll be a solid guy like that, just to hold everybody to a standard, be a leader, locker room guy. So if that's his case and that's his role, then I'm on board with it. Crystal Palace's Chris Richards is an obvious one, starting center back. He's probably going to be our main guy and easily could captain this U.S. side through the World Cup. Jedi Robinson makes his return to the U.S. team, playing some minutes now for Fulham. They're not forcing him back, but he's still getting some minutes in there. So it's good to see him back, and he'll occupy that left wing back spot most likely, along with Arston. And then Miles Robinson from Cincinnati has come in. He's had a really tough start to his season in the MLS this year. So it'll be really interesting to see if he steps up for the U.S. I think he's going to be one of those fringe guys as well that we could see dropping out. But again, U.S. does not have a lot of depth at center back, which is really, really concerning. And then Joe Scally, I think once again deserving of a call-up. He was kind of right on that border for me. And then with Dest picking up the injury, Scally immediately needed to be called up. The Borussia Mönchengladbach player has played there for quite some time now at this point, it seems, and has played a serious minutes, can probably play that right center back role as well as right wing back. So it'll be really interesting to see how Pochettino uses him in this window. And then the final defender, Austin Trusty, who I also had in my projection of this team, the Celtic defender, has had a good season so far for Celtic. So we'll see how he turns out. If he's used, I think he should be used potentially at center back as well. Now on to the midfielders. Kind of some obvious, pretty much the exact group of midfielders that you would expect. Sebastian Berhalter at Vancouver. You expected him to be in there. Christian Roldan as well. You can say what you want about Roldan. I understand he's not the best footballer, but he's an MLS player. You're going to have him. U.S. Soccer is going to push for MLS guys in there. And again, I think he's just a locker room type of guy and a leader off the field that he can just help glue things together. Johnny Cardoso, again, another expected player at Atletico Madrid. He's starting for Atletico now. So I expect him to get a good bit of minutes, try and work his way to actually getting some serious, meaningful contributions for the U.S. team, which he has failed to do so far in his international career. Big Weston McKennie is also included. Again, he has been probably one of Juventus' player of the season. He's had an incredible year and has played just about everywhere that Juventus is needed. He's played at center back, played left back, played striker, played everywhere. Absolutely key for Juventus, and he's going. In my opinion, I think he's really stepped up this season, and hopefully he stays healthy, continues getting himself in some fine form, and he will be a big contributor come the World Cup and in this March window. Aiden Morris, which I'm actually pretty glad to see, playing a lot of minutes for Middlesbrough, who currently sits second in the championship, fighting for those promotion spots with Millwall and Coventry, having a real good year in the second division of England. I think I'm a big fan of his, but I'm not like a huge fan. If he wouldn't have made it, I wouldn't have been so devastated. But I do like Aiden Morris. I think he's got a bit of bite about him. good bit of quality, but he won't be starting. He's not going to be a starting midfielder, but I could see him getting some minutes in this window. Gio Reyna is a very curious case. Again, I've talked about in the last video as well regarding the U.S. He just does not play a lot of minutes for club football, but at the same time, he puts on that U.S. jersey and he steps up. He's just one of those guys that he steps up for the U.S. national team, and you can't deny it. And he will not be able to play 90 minutes at all, no way. But to bring him on off the bench, I think is a good option to have. As long as he's fit and healthy and he cares, which hopefully he does for the U.S., I think this is his last real shot at really making some meaningful impacts at a major tournament, at least for a World Cup. With given his fitness issues, I think that his career is going to end quite early, at least at the international level. So I think he really needs to go ahead, show meaningful contributions in this March window as well as the World Cup to prove that he still has quality about him. And then Tanner Tessman, the Lyon midfielder, I'm a huge fan of his. A lot of conversation is happening right now about where we should play him. The injury to Tyler Adams has definitely kind of pivoted that conversation a little bit, but a lot of people are saying try him at right center back next to Richards. I actually don't mind it a lot. He's a smart player. He's got a lot of intelligence. He's just not as quick and as mobile to probably play in that two-man midfield at a very high level. I'm sure he will in this window, so we'll really get a good test and see how good he is in the midfield, and maybe Pochettino does try to deploy him some at center back. I mean, he's nice and tall, he's nice and big, he's got some size, and has the intelligence, so it'll be really interesting to see. He's listed as a midfielder, so, obviously he's going to probably be playing there, but we'll see if Pochettino experiments a little bit with him and his positions. And then the final midfielder listed is Malik Tillman, quite obviously. The Bayer Leverkusen attacking midfielder is having quite a good, solid year. Not great. He's out of form a little bit right now for the German side, but it's not a huge drop off, and he's got a lot of quality about him and has done well at times for the U.S. So he's got enough quality, enough individual quality that he needs to be in this lineup and he needs to be in the squad. Now onto the forwards. It's exactly what you would expect if I'm being honest. Ricardo Pepi, the PSV forward, just broke his arm. He's come back from that. Apparently he's just agreed to a deal to go to Fulham at the end of the season, so really interesting to see how that does and how he fares in the Premier League. Florian Balogun, the star man for Monaco, has really hit a good vein of form, scoring a lot of goals recently for the French side. So Florian Balogun is clearly our number one striker, deserves to start every day of the week. Obviously, Christian Pulisic is also in this team. It's quite obvious. He's going to be as long as he's fit enough. And then you've got Brendan Aronson, again, playing a lot of minutes in the Premier League for Leeds. You know what he has. You know what he's going to bring to the table for the U.S. He's just going to work as hard as he can. He's still, obviously, he has technical ability, but you just know he's going to work his behind off and nonstop. If that's all it is, even if it's 15 minutes, he will work hard, and you need that in some guys, especially at the front line sometimes. And then Tim Weah is also listed as a forward, the Marseille winger, fullback, whatever he is, you want to consider him. I have him playing as a right wing back. Again, that's at full strength. So, again, it really depends on who's fit, who's not. But I would play him at right wing back. But again, playing him as the 10, one of the 10s or slash wingers, is a hugely viable option. And I would not be shocked if he gets minutes in both positions. And then with Haji Wright being out, Patrick Agyemang comes in. I don't know. Yeah, he's just not a great footballer, but he just some reason scores for the U.S. and he's big. And I know a lot of these quote-unquote analysts at Fox Soccer have Agyemang in the World Cup squad with Wright and Pepi. With four strikers when we play with one striker is the most baffling thing I've ever seen from all these quote-unquote professional analysts. It's mind-boggling why you would have so many big strikers when you play with a one-striker formation. Doesn't make sense. But Agyemang is clearly in Pochettino's favor as the fourth striker, it seems. So we'll see if he gets any minutes. I'm sure he probably will off the bench some in this March window. But in my opinion, I just wouldn't have him. I just think a lot of other players are better. But again, the striker depth is not the best. Now, again, a couple guys that I would have loved to see called up, I mentioned it in my projection video a couple weeks back, is Rokas Pukstas. I think it would have been awesome to see him in this squad, especially if you're calling up 27 guys. You could have dropped Celentano and brought in Pukstas or Fari. There's a lot of other guys, someone like Gozo maybe. So again, there's a lot of guys that they could have brought up on the younger side to get them minutes in a camp, in a senior national team camp, but really disappointing. And then the other huge, probably unexpected / forgotten guy that could have easily been called up and probably should have is Alejandro Zendejas. He's having a great year with Club America in Mexico so far. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of ability on the ball. I just don't think Pochettino really is a big fan of his, which is kind of disappointing because I think he would have been able to bring something a little bit different. We do not have a lot of guys that can just take a guy on 1v1. I mean, you can say Pulisic, but at the same time, Pulisic has lost a step in the last couple of years, and I just don't see his European career lasting much longer. He's got a lot of injuries here and there, and he just seems like he's lost a step in the last year or so. So not a lot of guys that can take somebody on. So someone like Gozo or Zendejas would have been a little bit of a different option, but we'll see. Again, this is a 27-man squad. I would have probably had a few different players maybe, but at the same time, you can understand some of these call-ups, especially due to the injuries, around if, Tyler Adams is fit, who drops out, all of that conversation comes into effect. In my opinion, when you have Dest, you have Adams, and you have Wright coming in, those three would come into my World Cup squad. So who would drop out? I would drop Ajiman out for Wright. I would drop Roldan out for Tyler Adams, and I would drop Tim Ream out for Serginho Dest, because then that allows a lot more freedom for Alex Freeman to play center back as well as that right center back, which I'm a big fan of, in my opinion. But in my opinion, this seems like it's going to be the World Cup squad minus those three, and then you're going to have another guy drop out, which is going to be one of the goalkeepers. So it'll be interesting to see how March window gets on. I'm a big fan of it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready for the World Cup, despite all of the politics around it and all. It's still a World Cup at the end of the day, and I'm still really excited for it. But let me know what you guys think. Is there anybody that is not on this roster that you are kind of shocked? Do you agree with the fact that you think Puskás maybe should have came in, or Zendejas, or maybe you have somebody else? There's a lot of young players that are currently thriving in the MLS so far to start this season. So maybe you feel as though that someone like Julian Hall should have been called up instead of Ajimang. Try and get him some minutes or something. Let me know what you guys think. And are you guys ready for this March window? And are you guys ready for the World Cup? Let me know what you guys think. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see everybody in the next video.